look.
Alrighty. What are we drinking, sir?
We are drinking, what's it called? Celsius? It's a Pinot. In front of my noggin.
That should work there.
Love it. What is it? It's New Zealand.
All right. We should be good. I speak really loud, so I'll turn mine down.
Yeah, look, we'll both get excited from time to time.
Alrighty.
Love it.
We're on.
We're on. Should we cheers? We
Cheers.
should do a ceremonial cheers.
Cheers.
Let's have a taste.
Nice.
It should be good. Comes, shout out, Phil Conway, foodie of Master Chef, I don't know what season.
Yep.
Now works for Hairy Dog. He's my go-to wine man. So I said, Phil.
What is Hairy Dog?
It's one of those like delivery services for stuff, and he's like their wine buyer now. So yeah, whenever they're doing promos and stuff, I'm like, which one are we getting? And he's never let me down.
All right.
And I'll be honest, I like red wine, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
I love red wine. It takes a terrible bottle for me to be like, ugh. Otherwise, I'm just drinking red wine. That's fine.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
It's got to be bad.
Yeah.
It's got to be bad.
Nice.
All right, let's go.
Alrighty, what's the play here?
The play here is pretty simple. We've got our red wine.
Yep.
We're primed. You are, fair to say, known as a movement guy.
I love movement.
You love movement.
Yep.
Biomechanics, all the rest of it. So what we're going to do, we're going to drink wine. I'll fire questions at you.
Yep.
I'm going to do my best to keep up.
No, we'll be fine. Yep.
We'll be fine. I rate myself in terms of knowledge. I'll be honest, I'm rusty. It's been brilliant that a staff member of mine has been doing your mentorship.
Shouts out.
Shout out to Sam.
The goldfish.
The goldfish himself. He calls himself the Big Kahuna, which, I haven't.
One thing he loves talking about every time he's in here, just talks about how tall he is. And he wraps that up in his identity a little bit. We actually had to measure him today because I think he thought he was short.
He's been adding a few.
No, I thought he undersold his height, and he actually was. He turned out to be 193 centimeters, 6'4" on the dot.
Yeah, he's quite tall.
He's tall.
Yeah.
He's a big boy.
I guess I probably don't help because I'm 6'6" and he just spends most of his time next to me. So maybe he's just feeling a little bit self-conscious. But he's tall. You're tall, Sam.
Yeah.
Tall. But no, it's been great because I'd probably disconnected a little bit from my biomechanics nerd. And then he started doing your mentorship. And then he comes out and he starts firing questions at me. And I thought I'd moved on. And it's like, what's that? Is it The Godfather? It's like, just when I thought I was out. Pull me. And I was like, oh, here we go. And it definitely lit a little fire in me.
Yeah.
And what I've loved most is how excited you are about it.
I'm back.
And I love that. Like, I'm the kind of guy that gets very excited by other people being excited.
I can feel that. Yep.
Right? Like, I'll watch a
Passion.
YouTube video about something I don't even care about, but the fact that that person cares so much, I'm entertained, I'm in.
Absolutely.
And you've been going hard.
I've been going really hard.
I love it. So let's start off with the obvious. Training model.
Training model.
What is it? Where did it start? Where is it at? Where's it going?
Where's it going? So training model is ever since I'll go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I started in the industry, my best progression and what I felt as I always called them ovens. The oven of development for me when I was in a hotbed of just like has always been when I'm surrounded by just people that have like Woodford is the first one. He was just like hell bent on one thing.
Another guy who's just passionate, excited about what he does. You just love it.
Yeah. And then it was Cressy. I went to Eric Cressy and I did an internship over there. That was another oven for me. Then I got back and started the gym. And two young people, this is the first year, two young guys who had signed up from Deakin University. They were like, oh, we need to do our internship, our hours for fucking whatever the fuck. And they're like, oh, we'd love to do it here. Can you set something up? And I was like, well, all right, whatever. And I just started running an internship. And the way I structured the internship was the day before the next meeting, I would sit on my computer and I'd put a topic at the top of the page and I would just dump my brain on that topic. And it was just random thoughts. and then I would sit back and just collate the thoughts and put them in like maybe like 4 categories or 4 ideas or whatever. And then that's what the next hour of discussion would be on. So it might be like training principles, and then I'd have all the little principle ideas, and then all of a sudden it just like, and then I got to the end of that internship, and I was like, that for myself, that was an oven, and I thought I had to create these. I had to like enter these ovens, but I can do it myself, just by thinking about things and really like find. And that process I have just continued to do. Started with internships, free internships, then it went to little paid seminars. We used to do squat, bench press, and deadlift ones, like individual lifts. Which eventually turned into lower body and upper body, which then eventually turned into me going to New South Wales. I went to Queensland and did some traveling ones. Then COVID came, and I flipped it into an online version. This was in the evidence-based era.
We're definitely going to move on to that, don't worry.
The peak of the evidence-based era. And what I ended up creating for my first iteration of an online mentorship, it was called a coach development program. That turned into basically a university subject.
Yep.
There was pre-reading that was required. All of the pre-reading was research papers and stuff. There was a discussion on the research papers and then how we applied as coaches. I did 2 intakes of that. They were pretty fucking big. First one was 44 people in there. Second one was about 27. And then I was in the hotbed of COVID, and I just crashed and burned and all of that. And I just stopped, and I was like, what am I doing? And then I actually took a little break off formal education processes. I started a second company, which was called Strength Coach Development, to which I have closed and moved on from. And then I always had this idea that I just love educating. That's what I'm about.
Yep.
And Strength Coach Development crumbled because it was COVID and all of that. And that was what those things were going to be. And then I had this idea of like, maybe I can set up a portal. I'm very inspired by David Gray and what he has built in the online education space.
Yep.
And I look at what David Gray does as the gold standard of, obviously his silo of interest is rehabilitation, but I view in the industry that I don't think anyone's nailed strength training. And ultimately, that is all I care about. I care about barbell lifts. I care about in the gym. I don't care about your plyometrics. I don't care about your whatever the hells. I care about a client coming in and accelerating how quickly they can understand barbell lifts.
Yep.
And that is what my vision for training model is to show coaches how fucking simple strength training is when you don't get taught the narratives. You just get the objective nugget that everyone knows to be true. They everyone in their different silos wrap a narrative or a new term or a verbiage around an idea that we've known to be true for decades around training. The understanding of the truth within it progresses, but the application doesn't. Strength training is understood. Movement is understood. Hypertrophy is understood. Strength is understood. Motor control is understood. They have been for years. Why are people confused in how to apply it? And that's what training model, that is the one thing that training model is going at, is to show personal trainers and coaches strength training is not hard.
I love that.
You should not be confused. It is simple. It is so simple it's not funny. You're confused because you've been taught it incorrectly, or you've been taught narratives that surround the truth but not actually the truth itself. And that's where we're at. That is what training model is.
I love it. I love it. It's almost this idea of simplifying but doing less, but doing it to the best possible.
It's even more than that. It's going so far into the weeds that you know for certain the simple thing is that's the thing you have to do. I can go so far into gravity, mass, pressure, foot pressure, IRs, ERs, whatever you want to go into, just to know that that person actually doesn't need a heel wedge. They just need to learn how to squat better. And it's the simplicity. You've gone so far in the weeds that you just know the simple shit is the truth. You don't have to question that is the right thing to do because you understand it so well.
Yes.
And one of my favorite things that I've started to tell coaches is that the weeds are important, but keep them in your head. The client's garden needs to be just a curated meadow of exploration of fun things and training and enjoyment. In your head, though, needs to be fucking a weedy garden of like what's going on. But the communication to the client needs to be as simple as possible and no confusion, no CBIC and all of that sort of stuff.
100%.
And that's where I'm at with training model.
I love it.
Ask me again in 12 months, I'll probably change the idea, but
That's okay.
That's where I'm going right now.
And I'll remind you of what you said today.
Yeah.
That you were going to keep it simple.
But that's it.
I love it. It's good. I like this idea as well, like the we'll use your word, the narrative. No, the language you give to the client needs to be simple. Like in my mind, one of the markers of somebody who truly understands a subject is they can explain it very simply.
Yeah, it's a classic little whatever that thing is.
Well, I think it's
simple.
Einstein's.
You don't understand it unless you can explain it.
Yeah. And I also like this idea of you teaching others is also creating an opportunity for you to learn. You know, what's that saying? It's like when one teaches, two learn, or something like that.
Yeah.
Where previously, you know, you had to go seek out these opportunities to learn, you know, whether it's overseas mentorships, etc. But if you just put yourself in a position where you have to teach others, well, that forces you to grow. It increases your understanding.
To curate your idea and remove the fluff from it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I've been speaking a little bit about this recently, like this whole idea of imposter syndrome. But a lot of the time, like, well, before you go and present an idea to a group of people, right, or you're doing it, you're going to double check it, right? You're going to make sure that you're right. Because the last thing you want to do is say the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
Say something stupid. But it absolutely is a way to increase your own understanding of some of these ideas.
Yep.
I like it.
And one thing I would say is every iteration of my, and this even goes to like things like YouTube content. The original Strength Culture YouTube content was just me talking about anatomy related to squat, bench press, and deadlift. But every iteration of my formalized education, because I've done so many fucking just random things and I've built companies and I've killed them and whatever, because I want to do it. It's in me that I love it and I want to do it. But every time I rip the thing apart and rebuild it, every time it just seems to become more effective in the community. And I think what I've currently built with the movement mentorship is the single best delivery of the idea of how simple this is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that.
And the feedback mirrored that. So every time you go through a process, you get better at doing it in and of itself. So
yeah.
Just adding to what you were just saying there.
Yep. Yeah. And it sounds like as you go, you're almost removing rather than adding more things to it's like almost removing
all of it.
Remove the noise.
I think there's one research paper in this new thing and it's internal load.
Love it.
Let's get to this idea first. I think that's the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is perfect.
Because you don't need Here we go.
All right, let's go. Let's see. The other reason we have red wine, right, is if we say anything too controversial.
Nah, I'll be right.
We can just blame the red wine and say, sorry, we got a little bit excited. I didn't necessarily plan on talking about this, but it's topical at the moment. It's evidence-based, which, look, we all got sucked into it at some point.
Big time.
But it grinds my gears massively on multiple levels, right? But I'm going to let you continue your tangent that you're about to go down because I'm curious on this.
You don't need the research. It is not our job as a personal trainer or a coach to read the research.
100%.
You don't need to listen to I remember I don't want to say Greg Knuckles, but I'm going to use. I remember someone wrote a blog once on how to objectively observe research and how accurate it is and all of this. And I remember this was when at the peak of the evidence, I was like, oh, I really need to understand this process. Maybe it was Luke Tulloch, whoever it was. Someone made a blog or an email about like how to objectively observe a research paper and see if there's the right, like the biases have been pulled out or how they've structured the control group versus the whatever. And I remember, and I just go back to me in that point. I'm like, I don't need that. We don't need it as personal trainers. The client doesn't need it to better understand. And again, I come back to that. The application actually hasn't changed.
Not at all.
Think about all of the ideas of what we know to be true about, let's just keep it to strength training. We could go to nutrition as well, but all of the ideas and the evolution of what the evidence-based era has produced for us and just pull the practical stuff out. It is no different than from 2005 to 2024, or what we're in now.
No.
The process is the same. Do I need to increase this person's volume? Well, you don't go to the research first. You just say, oh, are they recovering? Are they training hard enough? And if neither of those are, well, that's what you do. And that's what decides whether or not you need more volume. You don't go to the volume Bible and work out that the science tells us that a 3x frequency for smaller muscle groups is required, and that is your decision to move. You actually just deal with the client in front of you and you ask them a few questions, and then you decide on the plan and hope that they're bought in. If they're not bought in, change the plan, because it's not going to work anyway. And it always just comes back with, does it actually change the application? Probably not. Why are we even wasting our time going down that route? And it's not our job as personal trainers and coaches, but it is certain people it is their job, because they love it and that's what they're good at and that's their strength, and absolutely get them to do that. We just do the face-to-face stuff with clients.
Love it. Yeah, totally agree. And I think the sad part is that narrative, let's use that word, has absolutely stuck around. And you do have people who should just be focusing on the person right in front of them, and they are overthinking and they are getting caught up in, what's optimal?
Yep.
What they should be doing.
Yeah.
What's this? What's that? Well, I mean, the thing that I come back to, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, but the optimal way to program doesn't actually exist, because it's going to be entirely context dependent anyway. Mm-hmm. There is no research paper that says, we did a study on, 30 to 34-year-old males that had children at this age, that were running a business, that were sleeping this much on average. And because all of those variables matter, right? Like, all that stuff matters. So at the end of the day, one single research paper is also meaningless. Like, if it's us dealing with clients, we want a body of evidence before we even consider changing what we do.
Absolutely.
Right? And to be honest, we knew enough about training in 1990.
I'd go further back.
1970?
I always use the Arnold. Would Arnold care about this? Probably not. He was jacked and strong and fine.
These Germans did pretty well. Yeah. I mean, they may have had some help.
That's the error that I always go to. It's like, would Arnold actually care about this type of pull down? No. He would just choose the one that he knows feels good and slam the fuck out of it. That's all that needs to be understood.
100%.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But that's why my only research paper is the internal load one.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
It is the understanding that the actual program, to a point, doesn't matter. And it's all a reflection and a reaction of the internal load, which is the person in front of you.
100%.
And it's the one-of-one research paper. And it's 3 pages. It's not even a research paper. It is. I think the term is a narrative review.
Oh, I like that.
Of the definition of load. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Franco Impellizzeri. Unbelievable.
Perfect. But yeah, I mean, if you're a personal trainer listening to this, don't go on PubMed.
Yeah, you don't need to. Because I don't even know how to use it.
Well, I have, but why?
Yeah.
It's just, there's also people that exist within our industry that will do things like research reviews, so you could just go and listen to them. Like, you mentioned Greg Knuckles, for example.
Absolutely. The mass team. Yeah.
Like, they do a great job. So if you want to stay up to date with cutting edge research, there are people that are a lot smarter than you, reading papers, and they work in the field, so they understand how to read a paper.
And also they understand the history of the ideas in the previous research, because all of that stuff matters to what the current question being asked is.
Correct. And the thing you want to be careful about, I find, in the social media era, is you can flip the narrative on a study pretty easily.
Oh, absolutely.
Like
what is it? Squats and fucking cardio one?
And this is the only study that I've read recently, because I was like, what is all this? And then I went and read it, and I was like, okay, the conclusions in this post are in no way reflective of the conclusions in the actual paper.
Yeah.
And it's also where we don't need a study to tell us this. Like, I knew, looking at it straight away, I was like, I don't need to read this study to know this is wrong.
Yeah.
Right. You don't. But
I don't know. And this is another fucking qualm of mine, is that all of this shit is just to keep the education machine rolling.
It is to keep the seminars full. It is 100% for that.
And the universities taking an undergrad, getting them to a master's, getting them to a PhD, which then brings in the next group, and it just punches out profit at the top of it. That whole machine is how we end up with what's better for your glute development, deep squatting or hip thrusting. Like, it doesn't matter because you're going to use both and it's going to depend on the goals. It's just fucking, the whole thing's backwards.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't know if you get asked this a bit, but I get asked it from like younger coaches, like whether it's worth going down the university pathway. And I don't know, because I think it depends on what the person wants to do. So I'm not going to make a blanket statement here. However, what I would say, when I did my undergrad, I believe it cost me like 12 or 15 grand, right?
Yep.
I think it was cheap, right? It's like subsidized and stuff.
Like 30.
I'm old, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like, what, 60 or 70 grand or whatever. It's huge.
It's massive.
So like, again, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying consider if you need to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that's important because, as you say, like, there is a whole industry behind that.
Yeah. It's a machine. It's a machine that needs more people to come through and do more shit research to keep the thing rolling. Yeah. Not to say that people that have done the research, you've put a lot of effort in, and I'm sure it was worthwhile, but there's some shit.
Oh,
yeah.
Because you did an exercise science degree, am I right?
Yeah, I did.
Yep. Now, this is going to be another blanket statement that might not apply to everybody, but it might apply to you. Would you say it's difficult to pass an exercise science degree?
Not at all.
No.
It's grunt work.
Like, it's not hard at all. Like, also having friends that work in academia in different fields, like, exercise science in general is in its infancy, and it is a weak field of science, right? There are study designs that wouldn't get published if it was like an engineering journal or something like that. It's just, like, what was that other evidence base? Like the 52 working sets a week for optimal hypertrophy or whatever.
They just run volume through the roof. Yeah, they run rep ranges through the roof.
It's like anybody who has coached for a decent period of time would look at that and go, no one's doing 52 hard working sets a week. Like, it's just not happening.
But this is another thing where I think that if one of my favorite things to do is just zoom out. Just zoom back, just stand back and actually just take a second and just look at what we're actually talking about, whether it be this research paper about the fucking squatty or whatever. Like, the question that they've asked probably was never designed to make it to the gym floor. It was, they just asked the question to see what would happen, and then all of these gurus then take that question and then try to apply it to the gym floor, and that's where the confusion begins. Like, even those like high rep range, they're just trying to work out if there's an upper limit, I guess, is what they're really trying to question. But then you get all the gurus that then, and then all of a sudden you get an Israel saying that the max recoverable volume is over here and fucking blah. And then all of a sudden the person that doesn't quite understand it hears Mike Israel say max recoverable volume is the blah, blah, blah. And then they're trying to apply it to a client. But and again, this is where the narrative falls down. Every time that information is passed through.
Yeah, it's like Chinese whispers.
Yeah. And then we end up with choose your fucking poison. My favorite one is stability, but you end up in a world where I don't think what we've got at the bottom of this thing is anything close to where this thing stemmed from to begin with.
No, and you know, most of this research is not, as you say, designed for the gym floor. Like, a lot of it will be based around, you know, injury, rehabilitation, health outcomes, an aging population. Sometimes, sport will get thrown in there.
Yep.
And then the studies that do get done on like bodybuilding or strength sports, like, they're usually not heavily funded, you know, with heaps of resources behind them.
Yep.
Because if you're handing out all the funding for research, right, where would you put most of the funding? Would you put it in?
No, you put it in the stuff that's actually going to make an impact, like not so much an impact, but the stuff like a government-based,
It's like not, because half the time, like, we care about this stuff, right? But I don't really care if there's a study out there that's like, okay, is full range squats, half squats, or quarter rep squats the most effective way to, like, I'm like, I actually don't really care.
I don't care.
Right?
Because I'm not going to apply it.
No, like, so they're not going to put much stock into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But something I think we've gone back and forth on a little bit is this, like, I call it the parrots. And I think this is the main problem.
Disciples.
The disciples, right? Like people that I guess get emotionally attached to an idea in a way, right? And that's the only lens they view anything through. And then they just repeat these ideas that were possibly good to begin with, but they don't understand them well enough to apply context and to know when it does or does not apply. Like I went through a period of, I don't know, it was COVID, so I had time and I was angry, of shitting on various ideas. And at the time, I was shitting on a lot of like breathing drills and PRI based stuff. But it's not that I'm anti that. It was that I would see these things.
You're anti the narrative around it.
I'm anti the narrative because I'm going. People go, you shouldn't foam roll because I saw this part and I got into it with this guy, but foam rolling because it doesn't do anything like on a physiological level to like the muscle fascia or whatever. And I was like, yeah, cool, of course, that's fine. Don't disagree with that. But then you're also posting about breathing drills. Like if you're saying there's no quantifiable way to say that a foam rolling intervention works, you could use the exact same argument.
You could use it for anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's the same thing.
No, but they just pick the, they cherry pick the ideas that conform to their bias.
100%. And we all do it to some degree.
Absolutely. No, 100%.
It's how we all do it.
One thing I do in my slides is I actually have a red thing that I put on and this is my bias. I have it there.
I like that.
I actually like purposely put it on the slides. And what I've said is that in the first few weeks, there will be no bias. It's just hard truths of movement.
Yep.
Once we get to lower body and upper body application, that fucking red button is everywhere. It's like, this is my bias. I hate this. Someone was asking me about face pulls. I fucking hate face pulls. I think they're the dumbest exercise ever, but I had to put it there. This is my bias. There's just better ways to get what you're probably trying to get out of. But again, that's a bias. Like you can apply a face pull in a certain, like it's having somewhat awareness of your bias is important, but also like I think that the smooth brain NPC content creators don't actually,
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It's definitely true. And I think I'd love to get your take on this. My view sometimes is a lot of, let's say, arguments, disagreements, or just like conflict within our industry could be avoided if we spent some time actually clarifying what things mean to begin with.
Absolutely.
Like, what is this? Because people would, you brought up stability, for example.
Huge.
Like, I've gone, I've changed my view on this massively. I've definitely went through like, you got to improve your core stability phase. We all have been there. But nowadays, I'm like, it's very much a made-up term. Because I go, my only definition...
It's a misapplied term.
Misapplied term. Because my only definition that makes sense is, well, stability really just describes something that's not going to fall over. Like, the more stable it is, the less likely it is to fall over.
Yep.
That's as simple as I can possibly make it.
Yep. There is and I've had this conversation on one of my call, maybe it was the GATE seminar that I did, the GATE webinar. That's the true objective. What is stability is the ability to be perturbed and return to equilibrium, which would be that you push someone and they feel it and they sense it and they come back and stand back up. It's basically balance.
Yep.
A system's balance. It's a little bit different with an organic system, so like a human that can perceive and change and all that compared to like a building.
Yep.
But that's the core of what stability is. There is a so in movement, we may lose some people here.
Yeah, let's go.
At a joint position in space, there's a moment of there's a instantaneous point of rotation. I don't know if that's the right term, but there's a point at which let's just use the hip. There's a point at which everything rotates around, and it's the central point of the bone structure of the joint. And as it moves, that point of rotation actually moves, and it's probably moving on an arc. And depending on the direction that the bone moves will depend on where that rotation point is in the joint. There's a thing called arthro and osteokinematics. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so osteokinematics is the global movement of a joint in space, generally applied to the planes of motion, because that's an agreed upon model that everyone uses. And the arthrokinematics is the actual like small sliding, gliding, rocking and rolling of the joint surfaces against each other. So when a hip extends, the ball actually moves forward in the socket. and there is a reactive stability that occurs to control that point. And this is where you get to the rotator cuff is a shoulder stability. It is controlling that point of rotation in the joint, but it has nothing to do with how stable the joint is itself or what people think how stable the joint is. It's a reactive tension that just makes sure that the system doesn't fall apart or anything like that. It's not a trainable quality. It's not something that needs to be communicated to the client. It's not something, it confuses everyone, and it's nocibic at the core because the client, even though they've been training for 3 years fine and their technique is altered and you've said, oh, your shoulders are unstable, that's seed in their head to 100%. Ruin their meadow.
Forever.
And it could be there, and they're thinking, I've been training for 3 years though. I've never had anything. And then all of a sudden they feel something like, oh, it must be my joint stability. And then it just starts this spiral. So there is a small element of truth of what stability is at the joint, but it's nothing that's trainable. It's nothing that needs to be discussed it's just your technique is all that we're really talking about.
Yeah, I love it. It's funny. I think the only context I still use stability is with the rotator cuff. Because it's only, and I know it's incorrect when I say it, like I'm a big believer that ultimately all models are going to be wrong in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, yep.
It's about whether or not they're useful.
Yep. Classic.
People will say, look, the primary function of the rotator cuff is to externally and internally rotate the shoulder. I'm like, no, the primary function is to provide stability to the humerus as it moves through space. That's what I would say.
Yep.
I know it's wrong, but if I was describing it to a client, I would say that. I'm like, no, it's not really about this. It's actually just to provide some stability and maybe control as you move.
Control is the word I prefer.
Yeah, like that's when I would use it. Again, it's incorrect if you nitpick it, but I think it's useful.
Yeah. I think, like, I got a little take on the rotator cuff. But when you think about, like, if you view the stability idea and go from a different angle to try to get back to it, one thing that I like to unpack with the people that come in the course is, like, what resists movement at a joint? I will just throw it to you. Like, what actually stops joint movement? Why does a knee move differently to the hip? And you get to these three governing ideas. It's the shape of the bones.
Anatomical structure.
The anatomical structure. Sometimes it's called osseous formation, which is just a fancy term to say bone formation, joint position, joint structure. People say the joint dictates the function. They're all ideas around the type of joint changes its motion potential.
Yep.
So absolutely. You then get to a group of qualities which are called passive restraints. So passive is that there's no direct control mechanism of them. This is basically all of the tissues in the body that aren't muscles and tendons. So you get to ligaments, you get to meniscus, you get to synovial fluid is in that, you get to adipose tissue, you get to skin, you even get to neural pathways and vascular pathways, and all of these things that cross the joint actually resist the movement of the joint.
Yep.
The final piece is active restraints, which is just anything that's controlled by the nervous system. So it's basically just muscles and tendons. And depending on where the muscles and tendons cross the joint will resist movement. All of the soft tissues change the way in which the joint itself moves. With that understanding of what resists movement, when we observe something change position and all of that, we can come back to that lens and be like, well, what actually happened? If the scap anteriorly tilted, well, it's not the bone formation didn't change, so that's out the window. The passive restraints, unless there's high force, they haven't changed. You haven't blown through a ligament, you haven't like ruptured your labrum, you haven't done any of that stuff. So there's nothing in there for what's causing this motion or no longer resisting the motion. The only piece left is it's the muscular system, and the muscular system is the central nervous system, and it's the control of the whole thing.
It's motor control.
It's not one particular muscle. It's the entire unit presenting an expression. Mm-hmm. And again, we come back to, so when a knee dives in for a squat, is it your hip stability, or is it just that's how the system at this point in time under this load and this fatigue and whatever else and the experience that they've had in developing their skill is just how it presents with movement? And then we get rid of the narrative. What's the application forward from there? And all it is if you're observing movement and you don't like it, teach them a new way. The process to teach them is well understood. slow it down, add a pause,
Yep.
change their awareness, try a different cue, try a different loading strategy. And we're in motor control land. And the stability conversation just always gets back to the motor control land, which is really just skill development.
100%. It's where people go, because it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, because they go, oh yeah, but I did this stability training with my client and they improved. Well, of course they did, because they got better at the task.
They better understood what you were asking them for. Yeah.
Like it's that. And I think it also highlights what you said earlier, that the language you use, like,
It matters.
like, because you hear, and we've all been guilty of it, using these jargon terms, but your client doesn't necessarily know what you're talking about. So if you see something you don't like and you go, yeah, what I want you to really do is focus on some external rotation. Like, they don't know.
Compression and expansion, man. The coaches that were just throwing that, you need to compress your pelvic. What?
And like, I shit on that all the time. And by the way, it's not because I'm anti Bill Hartman. I
love Bill Hartman.
I think he's one of the best thinkers in our space.
Absolutely.
Like,
he's too good for our space.
Yeah, like he just comes out with this stuff, and then the first guy, I've got
disciples.
Got no idea what he's on about, and then you go in and you're like, oh, this guy's actually a genius, but it's absolutely the disciples, and they become the problem. And what I find really funny, and this is where I get myself in trouble, the coaches that were throwing that around the most were predominantly powerlifting coaches, right?
Yep.
I can't really think of many sports where that really matters less than powerlifting, right?
Powerlifting is
like, and I'm not knocking it, whatever. Like, I think the beauty of it is the simplicity of it. But why are you moving so far away from the thing? Like, we've known, like, don't get me wrong, I don't coach elite powerlifters, but we've known how to get people strong for so long. You don't need to
it's
introduce...
not the position of the sacrum.
No. The counter nutation.
Yeah, it's not that. It's not the propulsion of the foot in power. It's just like, it's just wild. But ultimately, it just comes back to that. And I've fallen in this trap that this person is saying it and I trust them and I think that they're correct. Mm-hmm. So as long as I say that, I know I can fall back on that. And it just becomes like this. And it's fair. It's completely fair. And everyone's on a different part of their journey. But I just look back at even myself in that period. Not so much the Bill Hartman stuff, but maybe back to the evidence. Like, I was just doing that so that I felt confident in what I did. And that's another big thing of this whole training model thing is like, ultimately all I care about is that you're confident in the application.
I love the word like application. Like, can you use it?
Can you actually use it? Can you communicate it? Do you understand it well enough to know that what everyone else is talking about actually doesn't matter? And you can just do the thing that you know is probably true and it's going to work anyway. And it doesn't matter if it's not the most optimized lat pull down. It's just that this person likes doing it this way and they're training hard. I'm just going to let them go and just,
100%. Because I think a lot of the time, I say this to younger coaches, like, if you can justify why you're doing something, I'm not really going to tell you it's wrong.
Yep.
Because I might approach it a different way.
Within the context, yeah.
Right? But as long as you can say, I'm doing it for this reason, blah, 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 and maybe I can question parts of it, but ultimately I go, no, you're doing the right thing.
That's fair.
Where it becomes a problem, we go, why are you doing that? And you go, oh, I don't know. Or you go, oh, because they're compressed or because of their ISA or something. And then you do a follow-up question like, oh, so do you feel like they're struggling with their squat because they've got a wide ISA? It's like, well, they're not.
Yeah, we just don't know how to squat.
Yeah, like it's a different conversation. I love it.
Yeah, it's wild. Because I do believe, I think Bill's model is the most all-encompassing understanding of human movement. But whether it's the transfer of his knowledge in the delivery of education, I think hasn't been, because he just sits on these, used to be, just sits on these calls and people would ask him questions and it would just be like a 1% answer of something that needed 3 hours of context to be like, and it's just like, I don't know if he's ever going to do a course or whatever. I know he does his intensive stuff, but I feel like you need the entire package to actually understand, unless you're like one of us who's going to sit there and piece this thing together and actually,
And you probably need a certain level of understanding,
just anatomy
to begin with, which a lot of coaches aren't going to have.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we necessarily need them to have either, right? I think you need a basic understanding of anatomy.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, you might disagree with me on this. I think understanding of anatomy is a very good skill for a coach to possess because it allows you to troubleshoot things yourself.
Yep, absolutely.
Right. That's why I think it's useful. Beyond that, like I don't think, if you're like, hey, I coach powerlifters or whoever you coach, and you're on the gym floor and doing online coaching, like, do I think that taking your anatomy to like surgeon level is necessarily the best use of your time?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Well, I think, and this is something that I have a true biased belief that I know to be true, and I'm just going to force it down people's throats through my social content. I think anatomy is taught the wrong way. I actually think anatomy is the foundation of what we do as coaches, because you can't load a muscle without understanding. You don't need to know the exact point where it inserts, but if you don't understand how to load that muscle with a bone motion, you can't load it. You can't observe a Brett Contreras cueing a shortened glute position without any understanding of how the hip functions, how the glute moves, where the fibers are, where the load needs to be placed. Like, all of that is on the foundation of just base. But the anatomy that is taught generally through university, I think, is backwards. And it stems from the muscle. This is my muscle first, bone first thing. It stems from the muscle and the physiology of a muscular contraction that then gets zoomed out to a fiber, that then gets zoomed out to a sarcomere first, then to a fiber, then to a bundle, whatever it's called, then to an actual belly, then to a tendon, into a bone. And it's the muscle first process. And everyone's seen that little there's a muscle and it salamis down into this next thing and it moves down to the next thing and eventually turns into a sarcomere. You've got the actin-myosin and your cross-bridging and all of that.
Sliding filament theory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Learning it that way, I think, creates 90% of the problems around the application of anatomy.
It's quite funny because when I did my undergrad, we actually did it opposite. So the first unit of anatomy I ever did was just skeletal.
Unreal.
Right? So it was like, I'm trying to remember, like I'm old, but...
Unbelievable.
Semester 1, skeletal. Semester 2, muscular system.
Yeah, maybe I've got it wrong in my head, but I just remember the muscle
I think you're
shit
right.
first.
But I think now they actually combine it all into one.
I have a feeling that
maybe it depends, but like I remember doing it that way, and like don't get me wrong, getting bored of all this bone stuff, but now being grateful for it, because as we said earlier, like the first thing you learn is, that's your anchor point. That's how you're going to interpret everything else.
If that's your idea that you come back to.
Yeah. And it's much easier, like if you've just been learning like bone landmarks, right? So if you've gone through all that, cool. Then when you start to apply muscles, everything makes sense because you've got these familiar terms in your brain. You're like, oh, cool. I know what like the iliac crest is, for example.
Perfect.
Versus if you go muscles first and then you try and remember bone landmarks, like it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but also the idea, and I can get back to the stability thing. Learning it muscle first, you learn it through contraction, as that's what a muscle does, because it's the sarcomere, and it is innervated, and fucking calcium and ADP and the fucking cross bridge and ATP breaks off and we get the cross bridge and all of this thing happens. But that's the reconciliation point of anything you observe, is that when the knee comes in, something pulled it in. And it's like, well, I don't think something pulled it in. It just went in. And I actually think it shouldn't be muscle first or bone first. It actually should just be gravity. And this is I've decided to coin my own model because everyone else has models.
Why not?
And I'm like, fuck it. I'll make a model. And mine's called the gravity first model, which is just an understanding that gravity is actually what everything is responding to, and everything's a reaction to the gravity demand, which brings in the balance thing, which then brings in the center of mass thing, which then brings in the base of support thing. And everything is a response. It's a reactive response to control the system's equilibrium around the center of mass, which is being affected by gravity first.
Yep.
And all motion is a reaction. All movement, is a reaction to gravity.
Yeah.
And that's why...
It's funny, like when you say like you zoom out, you just go back to like Newton's laws.
That's it.
It's like that's literally what we're talking about.
Yeah, and one of my little shticks in the mentorship is that we know gravity comes first, and it's why we're sitting on a soft pillow. Because if we sat here for fucking our whole life is to manage gravity better. Everything we do, we sleep on a soft bed, we have a pillow under our head, we wear soft shoes, we walk around and all, because we know gravity is always there. And if we forget about it for long enough, it will impact us and crumble us. We have to sit down. We have to rest because we're fighting it all fucking day. The whole system is against gravity the whole time. It's always a response to the gravity demand. that's why gravity needs to be understood first. And then you get to like flexion and extension. And this is where I think the compression and expansion model comes in. Gravity is compressing the skeleton. The expansion or the tensile strength of the muscular system is reacting and holding us upright. That's your extension bias. That's all of your anterior pelvic tilt to 87% of the population. Well, maybe that's the position we should be in, and all of this. It just makes sense when you've got this gravity understanding as the foundation.
I like that. I'm going to tack on to the last thing you said there, like 87% of the people.
I think it's 87. Might be 89.
Something like that, right? The same thing, like if you go like, if you have clients that go like, oh, I'm flat-footed, like, so I need orthotics. It's like, do you?
Yeah.
Like, maybe.
Outside my scope, but do you have any problems?
I remember I had like a really good biomechanics lecturer in undergrad, and that was like his whole research point. But his whole thing was like, if most people are flat-footed, does the entire population need orthotics, or is there just an industry that's reliant on people purchasing orthotics?
Absolutely.
This is not me shitting on podiatrists. It's just a thought. But like when it comes to movement, and you mentioned it earlier, and this might be where we pivot. Coach is trying to fix something, right? But what if it's not a problem?
Yeah, you've narrotized the problem.
Right, like I use this, and I picked this up from nothing to do with coaching. It was actually from a doctor who was teaching me how ADHD works. But he's saying like you treat symptoms, right? So if something's causing you a problem,
yeah, it's a reactive medical system. Yeah,
like we'll do that.
Yeah.
If you've got clients where you go like, I would put anterior pelvic tilt, scapular winging. Let's throw that in there as well.
Throw in an extreme lordosis.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, right? Because it's like, but what if somebody's not experiencing any pain and they're making progress?
Yeah.
Do you address that?
Yeah.
Or do you just leave it the hell alone?
Yeah.
Because maybe that's just how that person moves.
It's their strategy.
Yep.
For the task in which their life task. That's the strategy that their system has expressed. Is it a problem or do you fix it? Is that kind of like the question?
Yeah, I'm just throwing it out because for me, if it's not causing them a problem, who are you as the coach to say that it is a problem?
I have a framework for this, which is that your job as a coach is when you wash away all the subjective stuff that you're trying to help people and get them confident and all of that, your actual job as a coach is objective adaptations.
Mm-hmm.
That is it.
They had a goal.
They have a goal.
Yep.
You're the expert in how to get that goal. If this person turned into a robot and you put the right inputs in, they would just move towards the goal. Mm-hmm. The deal with coaching, though, is that they're not a robot and you're constantly shaping and guiding and changing and battling fears and confidence and all of this, and you're building the thing, and that's where the process of coaching just becomes it will never be a robotic transaction of optimization. We're back to that idea. But your job is objective outcomes. Mm-hmm. And what are the objective outcomes that are trainable? I truly believe there's a very limited number of them in the gym. There's the skill of movement, technique, motor control. Yep. Not stability. Mm-hmm. It's not an objective outcome. It's nothing that we can actually observe and measure and change. It's skill. It's efficiency of movement. It's generally wrapped around a performance-based goal of a squat, a deadlift, a bench press, whatever the hell.
Sure.
Skill of movement. Strength, which is, when you boil it down further, it is force production. Force production requires a size of a muscle, and you can increase the size of the muscle to secondary action of increased force production. So we have movement, strength, hypertrophy. Yep. We then get to endurance. How long can the muscle contract? Mm-hmm. And then the branch of endurance is huge, but there's all the different pathways and whatever the fucks, like that's fine. So we've got skill, strength, hypertrophy, endurance. You then get to and endurance I call fatigue resistance. You then get to range of motion. Yep. Range of motion. You can increase someone's range of motion. More often than not, you're not actually increasing their range of motion. You're just increasing their access to the range they already had. If you want to actually increase range of motion, it looks like true stretching, let's be honest. Yep. The final one, I'm delaying because I've got speed and power, the rate at which a muscle can produce force.
Yep.
They are actually under the same banner. I don't think there's anything else. Objectively, in the gym. Again, that's my framework. Back to training model.
I mean, you could throw some energy system stuff in there if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I would call that. That's that endurance.
Sports,
that's that endurance fatigue.
Yeah,
that's that part branches out. But objectively, you're only doing one thing. You're building endurance, whether it's the the aerobic or the anaerobic or the ATP, the alactic, whatever.
Yep.
Ultimately, I think there's nothing else. And anytime anyone's talking about something that doesn't fall within that, they're actually just talking about one of them. If we go back to the compression and expansion model, what are we actually talking about? You're not training someone's compression.
Yeah.
You're training their skill, or you're training their strength, or you're training a muscle's ability to feel tension and experience tension for hypertrophy. That's what you're actually training. Compression and expansion are not trainable outcomes, so we can remove those terms. We can use different terms that actually make sense to describe those things. Stability, what are we actually training? It's motor control. It's the skill part. That's what we're training. We can get rid of that. It's no longer needed. Get rid of it. It confuses it. Get rid of that narrative. And that's the framework I always come back to. So if you observe something, someone's got wing scapula, and you're questioning, do I need to help this person? Mm-hmm. If it doesn't come back to one of those things, forget about it. It doesn't need. If you think that the wing scapula is changing the way in which you can develop hypertrophy of the upper back, all right, there might be something in there. But if their goals isn't hypertrophy of the upper back, the wing scapula doesn't matter. Don't even highlight it. Don't even talk about it. It doesn't matter. Unless they come to you and say, I really want to develop my upper mid back because of this, this, and this. Well, I know to get tension there, the winging doesn't make... I actually need to teach them a way, back to motor control, I actually need to teach them a way to coordinate this thing so that I can actually get tension on the rhomboid or whatever.
Yep.
And then it becomes, all right, I'm going to teach them a new way. But it just comes back to, what are we actually changing? We're observing something we don't like. The process to change it is just teaching them a new way, go through the motor control process to teach them a new way so they have understanding, they have context, and they can apply it under load, under fatigue. When you're there, when you're not there, they just better understand what it is.
Yeah.
That's my little framework. And the same thing with, is this person's knee coming in a problem with the hip thing? Well, if they're progressing, they're not in pain, they're not even worried about it, they're progressing, everything's going well, they're loving training and all of that. Does bringing that up change my ability to do those outcomes? No. Well, then it doesn't need to be brought up.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
I like it. And I think like something I'm bullish on, right?
Fucking oath.
Bullish
Stocks, baby.
Stocks.
Crypto.
Is, I guess you would call it narrative. I call it language. But two sides of the same coin. The language you use with clients matters.
Hugely.
Right?
More than anything else.
Massively. Because if you tell a client they have a problem, that something's broken, that something needs to be fixed, right? You highlighted this briefly before. But the clients I see face-to-face these days, they've all typically, like they'll be like in their 40s. So they've been to physios and chiros and had different PTs. And like the history, and it used to really stump me. I'm like, none of this makes sense. The only thing that makes sense to me after all this time is, well, every time they hear something, right, it impacts the way that they move. It impacts the way that they feel when they move. We're going full BPS here. Like my favorite rabbit hole to go down is pain science as a general rule.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's
interesting,
fascinating, and
it's so unknown still.
Because when I first thought that a physiological model doesn't make sense is when I was working in a clinic as an EP. I was like, this shit doesn't make sense, right? Like just encountering these same problems. It's like sometimes the cause of pain is in fact pain, which makes absolutely no sense.
Absolutely, I know what you mean.
But it is. And this is how I describe this to coaches. I don't know if you're a Harry Potter fan.
I love Harry Potter.
Great. You know the end of Harry Potter?
Have you ever been to Edinburgh?
Yeah. Wild, right?
Unreal.
How good. You look around, I'm like, this
is Harry Potter.
I'm like, it's Hogwarts. End of Harry Potter, right? Harry sacrificed himself. He thinks he's dead.
Yeah.
He's in his little dream state.
Yeah, he's in the White Room.
In the White Room.
The train station, it looks like. Yeah.
So Harry, he turns to Dumbledore, who's the original G, and he goes, is this real? Or is all this happening in my head? And Dumbledore says, of course this is happening in your head, Harry, but why should that mean that it's not real?
Exactly.
That is pain, right? Because what I think a lot of coaches don't understand and why the language and the narrative is so important. You don't have a pain receptor in your back. Like, you go, oh, L4, L5's cooked.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but there's no pain receptor there,
Yeah.
right? That signal needs to be interpreted, right?
The bell needs to be rung.
Correct, right?
Yeah.
And hey, if that person has some form of back injury and they've been told by a doctor, by a physician, by a physio, oh, be really careful when you're doing any heavy lifting. Does that increase the chances of somebody experiencing pain when they lift anything remotely heavy?
Yep.
You bet your ass it does.
Absolutely.
Every single time, right? I had a client, like this was not that long ago. It's like, oh, I can't do anything overhead. I was like, oh, why?
What's that?
It's like, oh.
Johnny told me 33 years ago.
It was literally like this person I was like, where did you see this person? She's like, oh, it was pre-COVID. I was like, what, you're just not going to put your hands over your head?
It's wild, man.
It's crazy, right? And that's where, like, I think the parrots, the coaches that are throwing these terms around, like, you want to be careful. And if you are interested on this, I think I don't know if it's a TED Talk or it's a YouTube video. His name's Larimer Mosley. He's like a pain science researcher.
That name rings a bell. He's got curly hair, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and he's entertaining as hell. But he's great on it.
Yeah.
Tells this story about being bitten by a snake and stuff to sum up pain science. But it's like, yeah, like how your client views the world is absolutely going to influence how they
every outcome.
Yeah, literally everything.
Yeah. And they're my shtick. I got shticks on all these things. I just call it the subjective experience.
Yeah.
So let's go back to L4, L5. It actually doesn't matter if there's any damage, and we know this now in the research. It doesn't matter if there's damage, doesn't matter if there's no damage or
there
whatever.
There is damage.
Yeah. Or
like if we both got MRIs today,
absolutely, everyone.
There's damage.
Yeah. But the objective actually doesn't matter because the objective is shrouded in the subjective experience. And until you change the subjective experience, you won't change the objective view of it. So it's always just, and this is the same for every process in life. Now we're zoomed out past health and fitness and pain or whatever, objective training and hip stability and all these things. The only actual thing that matters is how, and this is like really in the fair, is how you think and feel about it.
I could not agree with that more.
And it's kind of like nihilistic a little bit, but it's also like kind of like, well, it's okay if it's not, and then we get back to it's okay if it's not optimized. It's okay if the knee comes in. It's okay if because the only thing that matters is the client confident? Are they enjoying it? Are they fucking trying hard? Are they progressing? Like,
yeah, like in many ways, like what's the most important thing? It's like, is it your client's progress or is it your client's perception of their own progress?
That's it.
I would argue it's the latter.
It's the latter. It's always the latter. It's their idea around what's actually happening. Their feeling around it. Because, and I don't know, you've trained some high performance people in your time. You can have someone that has ticked every box and done everything, and they've even still, let's just use a PR. They've even gained 5 kilos in the process, but they're still unhappy about it.
Oh yeah,
because they expected 10.
Oh, yeah,
and it doesn't matter how you frame it, how you fucking repackage it and tick and try to show them and pull the program up and be like, we were here and now you're here. If their expectation doesn't match what actually, it doesn't matter how positive it is, it's still not a shit experience, but it's still a tainted experience that alters what happens next, and they
100%.
Might actually sack you.
Yeah,
you did everything right. You got them training, but they wanted 10 kilos. You gave them 5.
You're the worst.
You're the worst. I really thought I was going to be better. And it's like, well, fuck.
Yeah, and then you can have the opposite too, where someone never hits a PR again.
And they love it.
But they're like, no, I'm feeling great about this. Like, this is the best I've felt about my training. It's like, great.
Right?
I've
actually gone backwards.
On paper, I'm like, you used to be a heap stronger, but like, it doesn't matter.
That is wild.
Like, I'm doing my job. You're happy.
And it's a real glass shattering moment when you realize it, and when you realize it's everywhere.
Oh yeah.
It's a huge like, wow. All of this stuff actually doesn't. It doesn't matter how much money, and then we get to business. It doesn't matter how much money you make if you feel shit about making the money.
100%.
Like, you could walk home with $5,000 every week, but if you're stressed and anxious and your relationship's falling apart and all of it, the objective monetary value doesn't matter because everything else has lost its as opposed to going home with $1,200 and loving it.
100%.
Stress free. I'm fucking ticking
I'm
goals.
taking that.
Exactly. You're gonna obviously like there's context around all that, but
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
It's just subjective experience
For coaches too, like the thing I'd throw on the end there is like work-life balance. Like I'm never going to have that. You're probably never going to have that either. But that's not what matters. What matters to me is like enjoyment of the thing.
Yeah.
Like if I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I could work 80 hours a week and be the happiest guy on earth.
Yeah.
If I hate it, I could work 10 hours a week and be just completely
I won't
miserable.
even start it.
Yeah, I'll be depressed. I'll be depressed the entire time.
I won't even start it. I'll just avoid it if I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's wild. But I also there's a caveat to that because sometimes I like the whole idea of like love what you do and all of that, like blah blah blah. Like at the end of the day, it's still work. Like it always, yeah.
Oh, I think,
and I don't want to give someone especially a young, and it's easy for us to sit here because we own businesses and we do our thing, and we've ultimately created the direction that we want to.
Correct. Yes.
That still takes a fucking shit ton of work to get to that point, and there's still headaches. And we had a fucking 1 hour chat around that. There's still headaches that you wouldn't even comprehend that come from that process. But
without a doubt, I think it's like, love what you do, but you don't have to love every task that you do. You don't have to love every minute of it. Like there's moments like for me, like if I'm getting bored, for example, it's usually a good sign. It's like, because sometimes like that boring repetition.
You've done the creative. Oh, well, that's how I would view that.
Yeah.
You've got through the creative part. Now it's actually, I've built this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like that's going to be necessary. So I think you're right. Like if you're a young coach listening to this, don't think like, if I don't love it, I shouldn't do it. It's like, there's going to be parts of your job you don't love.
Always.
That's just business and life, isn't it?
Fucking oath. Absolutely. We're back to the subjective. Nice.
Fuck, how good.
Any other movement questions? Did I lose you at any of that? I don't think you're not going to get lost there. I'm not going to.
No, I was feeling good.
You want another?
Yeah, look.
You want a little quarter glass?
Let's go. Why not? No, I was loving that actually.
Does the gravity first model make sense? It's all a reaction.
It does. I like the way that you explained it then. Because obviously I've seen your post on it and stuff, but I enjoyed that explanation. It does. Like ultimately, like it's all a narrative, isn't it? But I like that narrative.
Yeah.
Because I go like, it's that zoomed out. Like, hey, when you boil it all down, it's this, and you can nuance it, and you can get stuck in the weeds, but it all comes back to this.
Back to that. I think that's what a good model has.
Yeah, you got to have a central. You got to have. I would call it like a North Star, right?
Yep.
It's like this is your direction. It's all based on this. So like whenever you try to figure out something, you can zoom back out to that. It's like, cool, this is the thing.
Yep.
I think it's good.
And a good structured model and idea, and with those core pillar ideas, everything should come back to them.
Yes.
And the more, I don't know who I picked this up by, but the more like it depends, or like the more that a model requires. If the model itself, this is why it's called training model actually, but if the model itself can't answer the question, the model's not accurate enough. Every question should be answered by the model itself. And that's why the BPS model, I don't care if you truly understand it, it is all encompassing because every single thing fits in there. And if what you think doesn't fit in, that you don't understand it.
I totally agree. I hear where people say like, and you see less of people, maybe it's because people post less about it now, so you get less pushback on it. But when people, like in our context anyway of training, because people go like, no, there's a hard objective thing, like this is an injury, this will cause injury, this won't. People go, I'm like, you just don't understand.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
Your idea is flawed.
Because they're
before it even started.
They'll also be the type of people that will come around and do a post a week later, be like, aches and pains are normal, you just got to push through it. It's like, you just completely contradicted yourself. Like, anyway.
What models do you use? Whether it be coaching, business, like what are the frameworks that you have that guide you? Or you've been, obviously the BPS is one.
Love the BPS.
Yep. Big BPS guy. Bullish on the BPS.
Bullish on the BPS.
Yeah.
I'm a big P on the BPS.
Yeah.
I'm a P and a S.
Yeah.
Like especially within my business anyway, I think the B, don't get me wrong, it's not that it's not important.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I think if you get that pretty good, then the P and the S becomes more important.
Yeah, I think over time,
that becomes important.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. The P and the S, the penis.
All right, BPS, big time, big favorite of mine too. One of my central three, actually. Yep.
one of my favorite models to coach with, right? I love your take on this anyway. Are you familiar with, I'm sure you are, have you seen Lee Taft's stuff?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
Speed guy.
the speed guy, and I don't know what I think he does tennis or something now. He's pivoted.
He does basketball. I know he still does a lot of basketball
great.
stuff. I think he just works with
Kids,
multi-directional,
athletes that want to get fast.
whatever that is.
Yeah, great.
Applied to whatever. I
Yeah.
think that is really his niche. Short period multi-directional. So tennis, basketball, like just rapid little.
Yep. And like he's the man for that kind of stuff.
Unreal.
Went fully down that rabbit hole. But my main takeaways from that, and Paddy D helped me figure this out. Which if you're looking for somebody who is the brains and the brawn, be hard pressed to find somebody better.
I love him.
And
everything about him.
His mentorship that I did was just.
Oh, you did it, did you?
That's when
The COVID one.
The COVID one.
Jared Kay did that when I was living with him.
Yeah, so Jared and I were literally and I love Americans so much, right? But I love how emotional they get.
Yeah.
So Jared and I, we're on these Zoom calls, and people are abusing each other. It's getting
because he put you in teams or something.
Against each other?
It was battling.
Yeah, we were on the same team, and Jared and I are just literally drinking red wine. It's 11 p.m.
What is
I'm
going on?
I'm pretty convinced at this point I'm going to go bankrupt. So I'm doing this mentorship with Pat Davidson, and Jared's like, "What is going on here?" I was
Didn't you have 80 people in it or something?
something. I think it was more.
Yeah, and he put everyone. Yeah, and you had to present on an idea or something, and then you battle the ideas against each other.
It was crazy. But what he did make us do was
if anyone's still listening to this, unreal. Fucking, this is mad. This is a mad conversation.
Yeah, because at the start I was like, "What am I doing?" And it might have been $1,500 or $2,000 or something. It wasn't the cheapest thing in the world. So also shout out to Pat D. He's made 150K.
No. He doesn't need it. He prints.
He prints.
He prints.
He loved it. He was killing it. Great guy. But it was awesome because also he made us write out our training model, and then our own team would critique it first, and then you had to go head to head with other teams, and they would just shit on it. And this is where if I see a young coach and their model's not very good, I'm not going to shit all over it.
No.
Right? That's not my style.
My favorite thing is
These guys.
Oh, really? Yeah, they just went. Yeah.
Oh, they were shit. And mine was good. That's when I first saw Jared's thing, and I read it, and I was like, this sounds pretty cool. I was I read it, his last line of it. I still remember this, so hopefully he listens to it.
Jared thinks deeply about how he,
It was you become the sixth principle. And I was like, oh, that's deep.
He's got 6 ideas, and the 6th one is, it's your application of it. Which is just individualization, but it's framed in a creative way.
Yeah, and I was like, I like that.
That's mad. Yeah.
I was like, that sounds pretty sexy.
Yeah.
But no, we were talking about going back to Lee Taft.
Well, that's how we got here.
Yeah, that's how we
Why
got
starting
here. Lee Taft, why not?
Yep.
What he does when because he teaches kids, right? So a lot of and he does groups of kids.
Yep.
So
teams
and shit like that. So you've got to have a model, right? That's not super complicated. It's got to be clear and simple.
It has to have rules, but it also has to have very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. His big thing is he doesn't rely on teaching so much. Well, he does, but the way that he teaches is by using the environment. So he's big on external cues.
Yep.
So rather than trying to teach a kid how to lean in a sprint, he just gets them to hold a medicine ball. So naturally they're leaning.
Yep.
That is genius.
Just constraints, yeah.
Right? So he's big on this constraints-based approach.
Yep.
I am massive on the constraints-based approach. Because even if somebody gets it, right, I think there's a difference between, and I got this from Josh Smith actually, there's a difference between learning and realizing.
Awareness, yep.
So your client can learn, you can tell, learn it, but then they have to realize for themselves, that's what Jamie was talking about.
Context, the awareness, yeah.
Create the context. Yep. So you use, right, these tactile cues and things like that to create the awareness, so to create those moments of realization for your client. And in my experience, you just get there faster. Yep. I'm not saying that purely using verbal cues won't get them there. They might. But you're also relying on your client having the same understanding of these terms that you do, which they might not. So I'm big on that. Okay, what can I do? What can I manipulate in this environment, right, to get my point across in a simpler and clearer way for the client?
To get them to actually be aware of what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back at the start, we were talking about if you don't like someone's movement technique, you observe. I don't like that. Change it. Teach them the new way. What you've just described is I have it on a continuum because it's my third principle of my governing movement model, the gravity first movement model. Everything lives on a continuum.
Absolutely.
The governing continuum of the entire model is the sensory versus motor continuum. Sensory end is input, awareness, sensation, feeling. At the motor end, the output end is your strength, performance, hypertrophy, stimulus, and all of that sort of stuff. Every decision of coaching slides somewhere on the between just feeling something and then high end performance. You could put anything in there, but ultimately, when you observe something you don't like, you just slide back as far as you need to for them to feel it. Once they feel it, contextualize it, build awareness, and then go back the other way. We have two of the same models.
Absolutely.
What other models do you have?
I like that.
BPS and the constraint sensory sort of understanding awareness. Yep.
And I feel like you're also almost in a way including like a progression regression style thing within that.
And this is what the most important thing with my mentorship is. I do not want you to become my disciple. I am trying to get you to think better.
I like that.
I don't want, when you ask me, how do I improve this person's deadlift? I actually don't give you the answer. I say, what do you think? What are the strategies you can employ? What would that look like? And then they come up with their own drill. I'm like, that's great. Just tweak that bit. Bam, you're good.
100%. And like,
I'm not telling you the answer.
But they're learning so much more.
Yeah.
Because, it's like the saying, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man to fish, you feed him for life. Like, it's that exact same thing.
Yep.
And I think that's really important. And to anybody listening to this, like, I firmly believe, like, the next generation should be better than we are.
Absolutely.
Right? You should be you should surpass us. Like, you should be better at movement, better at this understanding, right? So, yeah, that's massive.
Especially if you're learning from the people that have washed away the crap.
Absolutely, like, because we've learned obviously probably from some of the same people, some of the different people.
I think we've got a lot of the similar.
Yeah, and like I also, because I'm old and maybe more mature and calm down a little bit. You go through phases, right? You go in like all in on somebody, and then you go, ooh.
You hear one thing and you're like, ooh.
I don't like that. And then you circle back to it. I'd put Mike Boyle in this category. So Mike Boyle, when I first came up, I'm like, this is the GOAT.
Oh, you went through the bell curve.
Oh, yeah.
Of yeah. All right, gotcha.
And then I got to this stage where I'm like,
everything's wrong.
Yeah. So this guy's got no idea.
And then you went through the process and like, oh, fuck, he had it. He had it the whole time.
He had it. And all I would change from his model, like it's, again, going back to like the language and narratives, because I'm like, Mike Boyle's model is great, but I don't think doing a machine row ruins your athletic ability. Yeah. Like open versus closed chain. Like I actually don't think that's anywhere near as important as his model makes it out to be.
Yeah.
I don't think that doing, steady state cardio ruins your ability to run fast.
Yep.
Provided you still provide a stimulus to run fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like those are the things I would nitpick. But the overall concept of like we have progressions, regressions, it's detailed.
There's types of movements and these things fall together and they fit together and you can program around them and this whole thing just fits and it's productive, it works.
Because we've got it at the gym. What's his functional training for sport or something? I think is his book.
That's his textbook. There's probably like 48 iterations of it by now, but
and likewise, remove all the language out of it. Like I hate the word functional these days, but remove all that stuff out of it. You go
very practical.
Great, like
sound advice.
You can nitpick it, but it's useful.
Yeah,
right.
And that's my whole my another shtick is that sometimes, and it takes a more experienced person to be able to do this, but sometimes you can actually just look past the flowers of what they're prettying it up with and the words and stuff, and just objectively look at they're actually just talking about this.
Yeah,
yeah, and.
We dress it up at different things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the narratives and all of that sort of stuff. And I come back to like a Bill Hartman type of thing. If you're confused when you're observing that, just blank space all of the narrative that gets you to the application and then just say, this person needs a heel wedge. And then just think about that for a second. All right, why? Oh, it's because of X, Y, and Z that would make sense. And then all of a sudden the application is all that matters. We're back to that central piece. That's why I'm doing the training model thing. One's definitely hitting me, but
I'm all about it.
Yeah,
this is when we find out how smart we really are.
Yeah, but it just, I don't know.
No, it's good.
Maybe I'm naive to think that, but I am 12 years into my internal dialogue of what the fuck I do as a career. But I feel like I've just been able to like, oh, that doesn't actually. You could go through the PRI rabbit hole and actually observe what they're actually talking about. You can go through a Bill Hartman, you could go through a Pat Davidson, you go through a functional strength training for whatever it is, go through that. Like it just.
Books are the key. Actually,
I hate reading.
But like, I don't mind reading.
I like YouTube.
I like YouTube is good. YouTube at 1.5 times speed. That's me.
That's you.
But like, the reason that I think books are a great learning source, I've heard you post about like textbooks as well. Yeah. I love textbooks. Do you know why I love textbooks?
There's no narrative.
It's just, it is what it is, right? And the reason that books are typically better, the ceiling is much higher, right? It is harder to get something in a book.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Right? Like, anybody can post a blog on some shit. Anybody can post a YouTube video.
Post a reel. The reel's probably the easiest. Actually, a story. A story's the
story's
easiest. Then a reel.
Like,
then a carousel.
Yeah.
Then we get to a blog.
Yeah.
And then we get to probably a blog series, maybe, like a 10-part, and then you're in a small book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you writing a book?
Yeah, that was, it's a
Are you allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, no, I can.
Are you actually writing a book?
Yeah, so this is what happened. So I was writing a book and I got, editor feedback and stuff, met with some publishers.
Oh, wow. You did proper. You wrote a book.
Like,
how many words?
I like writing. Last draft was like 60 odd thousand.
How many documents is that? Word document?
Oh, mate.
What?
It was so many.
10,000?
And so many iterations. And like...
No, 60 words. That can't be right.
60,000 words. Like a lot.
It'd be like...
I don't even know. It depends on how they would format it. But like... Yeah, it's a lot of words.
Who knows? But yeah, what's the
Well, it was...
What's the nugget in the book?
Well, this was basically like... We'd spent however many years coaching these people at the P-Hub. And basically it's like... The solution in my mind becomes very simple, right? And it's not as like detailed or as like a training model, but like in my opinion, fitness is very simple, right? Like if you zoom out, it's like
absolutely.
Like you should probably do some resistance training. Let's say 2 to 3 times a week.
I'll tell you what it is. It's the fucking health guidelines from the government. It actually ticks the box.
I know. I'm like, one of my favorite things, people like shit on those. I'm like, no, they're pretty good starting point, right? Like these people know what they're talking about. But it's like, do that, do some conditioning, look after your heart.
And
you should eat pretty well, right?
Do something you enjoy.
But it's like most people, right? They need some training. They need a training program, some guidance around that. They need to eat reasonably well. They need some accountability and some help to actually do it, right? And they need to find an environment in which to do it where they feel comfortable. Yep. That's literally all they need, right? So I was like, I'll turn this into a book.
Absolutely.
Right? Great. Then I get to this point where I'm like, meet with publishers and they're like, your book's great. We love your writing style. I was like, sick. They're like, now the problem is the way the publishing industry is going. We're not going to publish anybody's book unless they have enough of a social media following. And I get it. I get it. I was salty at the start, but I get it.
Yeah.
Because like they're not going to roll the dice on something.
There's no point. Yeah.
Because they're like,
especially to print, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, like it's a huge outlay on their behalf. And this publisher I was speaking to,
what was the number that you had to fucking create?
They weren't even like there, but it was like, and I was like, okay, and I'm probably just going to self-publish it to be fair. But she was like, for example, like I've published like 4 of Gillian, whatever her face's books are. She's like, they're all awful.
Gillian Michaels.
She's like, I don't know, like the Biggest Loser or whatever it is. Yeah. She's like, they're terrible. And it's like, she didn't even write them herself.
That don't even surprise me. Yeah.
But she's like, but we'll publish it because I'm like,
absolutely.
You're a business and you want to make money. Like,
it's gonna sell 100,000 just because it's got that name on the front of it.
Yeah, which like it is what it is. And then also I was like, the other barrier I ran into, I was like, I could really try and go all in on building this Instagram following and become an influencer, but also the target market of this book is also not the target market that I want to be an influencer for. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to park that idea. I'll still publish it.
Have you written? So it's written.
I would probably need to get it through like a last.
If you had to give it a percentage of how much until it's a completed product, what are you at? 80%?
Yeah, probably
80%.
Pretty much everything in my life is at about 80%. Yeah. Just some formatting and stuff. But yeah, wild experience. Yeah. Also, like having an editor. Fuck, that's wild.
Like review your.
Yeah, because like they just have to they obviously it's their job. That's what you pay them for. But they're like, this is shit, change this, this is
They'll
shit.
just rip you.
Yeah, because they have to.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, this
doesn't fit here. Why are you even, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like real, like, and like they do it so fast, but like it doesn't make sense. What the hell? What the hell's this? What's this? And you're like, okay, cool. But it's actually
cool
good
feedback.
Yeah, it's good. And then
have you found that your copywriting has like exponentially just gone through the roof?
Yeah, like I would say my writing's always been good, but
all right.
no, it has. Like it was my thing. Like in a weird way, like in high school, for example, I did not.
I suck at writing.
I didn't do any science.
Yeah.
I did English and literature. And I just
How the fuck did you get to EEP and stuff? Aren't you masters in nutrition? I thought you were nutrition masters.
I did ex-phys as a masters, and then I enrolled in a nutrition masters. I got halfway through it, and I realised
that's what that was.
Yeah, so I did a grad.
I thought you had a nutrition masters.
Yeah, they call it a graduate diploma, I think, because you can exit early. And I was like, I don't want to be a nutritionist. Why the hell am I doing this? It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it has what it has done though, like in copywriting, it's made me so much better at making things clear.
Absolutely, I suck at it
because it's like I'm very good at making things sound clever. But it's like that doesn't sell shit.
No, because you're speaking about back to the words you use matter. You're actually one thing I've learned, but I struggle. I might actually need you to business meeting. This is something I'm going to bring to our first business meeting.
Here we go.
But I struggle to speak at the level of the and I think Instagram, when I view my business model, if you've made it to this point of this podcast, congratulations.
Yeah, we're like.
Send me a DM. I'll send you something. Like if you're here
what
now,
are we at now and 20 in? Yeah, it's pretty wild.
But also we have covered some fucking ground. But
absolutely,
yeah. I view this is my business model of like my marketing and my offer creation of training model and all of this. Instagram needs to be at the widest sweeping audience possible. I struggle to speak at that level because I like the technical fucking blah. I like the deep model, the deep application, the idea, the crazy word that it describes it, but it makes sense. And for me, that becomes my YouTube channel because if you're going to sit through me at a YouTube video and subscribe and click on it and all of that, you want me to actually...
They're going to buy your shit.
But I'm struggling to speak at the broad sweeping audience of lifters and coaches on Instagram because I just want to always go back to the deep shit. And I actually might need your help because I can't get there and stay there.
I think it's hard. The quote that comes to mind is like, and I'm so scarred by the word niche, but I'm going to use it. It's like niche until you're uncomfortable, right? Because
I want to show you my view of niche, but yeah, keep going. Yeah,
it's like niche till you're uncomfortable because.
What do you mean by uncomfortable?
So like till you get to this point because you're like, oh, I need to speak to this person. It's like niche until you get to this point where you're like, it's uncomfortable to be this specific.
Yeah.
Right? Because you go, oh, but what about these lifters in the gym?
Yeah.
Because realistically, you probably like the quality of your content or your post or your writing or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you can't like if you're trying to write for two people at once.
They both get lost.
Yeah, they both get lost.
They both
it's
get
not
lost.
clear,
yeah.
right? You can be clear to one person or clear to the other.
Yeah.
I think the thing that can work in your favor, if you are like going Instagram, like it should be a wider thing. It's like, yeah, Instagram, like, yeah, it's shorter attention, right? Great. And then you can use that as like a funnel if you want to use that word to drive people to your longer form content.
Yeah.
Great. I don't think you need to be afraid of being technical and higher level on Instagram because of that.
Yeah.
Right? I think you need to have a balance of that higher level stuff and then introduce stuff that is highly relatable for people, right?
Yeah.
Because if you introduce that storytelling element as well,
yeah, it's something I'm trying to be better with.
that bridges the gap because they
don't follow it. They can sort of like see it. They can feel, that actually, I'm back. And kind of like,
100%.
Like the dolphin analogy. That's an ADHD thing, I think. You come up and realize you go back under it. You come up and,
It's like that. And you can go like, I don't know, you go like a technical topic, like whatever it is, but you could go like, okay, how I learnt the importance of a gravity model or something.
Yeah.
And then it's like the exact same thing.
And these are your swipey little things where
100%. And like that like bridges your gap. And then you can go like more technical shit as well. Because you can still say high level stuff on Instagram because you don't actually need someone to understand it.
Well,
in fact, if they're confused in a way, like sorry, not confused. If they're curious, you want to invoke curiosity. So if they go, what the hell does that mean? Like, what's he talking about? Curious. And they watch it because they're curious.
You want them to be intrigued. I actually have a thought of this entire thing. Let me just plug that back in. So my version of you telling a story and all of that, I want my posts to be broad sweeping, but my story, if you ever end up on my story, it's just like whatever the fuck, go wherever you want, longer format. That's kind of how I view it, but this makes sense that the posts themselves, because sometimes I don't post something because I'm like, oh, that's actually just going to lose people. But maybe I'm thinking about it too much. It doesn't matter. That makes a lot of sense. The intrigue thing, where I think Bill Hartman did this better than ever, and I don't actually think he purposely did it. But just the fact of the type of content that he made for 4 or 5 years, you almost couldn't not go back and be like, oh, what's he talking about now?
Those ones where he was sipping through the straw?
Man,
what the fuck was
he'd
that?
plant a seed in the back of your head and you'd be sitting there for like 2 weeks and you're like, I have to fucking go back.
was that?
Bill Hartman, fucking whatever.
What did he used to say at the start of the video? He's like,
16%.
just having my Neuro coffee.
Yeah, he's a weapon. I don't think it was ever calculated or whatever, but just the way that it was constantly like, it would just be like shrouded in like, what is this guy talking about? Just kept, definitely me, just going back to be like, what's next? Like, where does this go? Like, it was and sometimes I have a whole, we need a business meeting.
Yeah.
Because this is something that part of like my YouTube strategy that I want to create is that because this is just my bias, but I love the contextual stuff that makes the post just make sense. Yeah. I struggle with just dropping something that doesn't have, because I don't want to confuse people. But then I view back to what Bill would just drop the fucking bombs, and it was on you to go back and piece the thing together.
He was literally like, figure this shit out, and then when he's like, this isn't for everybody. And if you can't keep up, it's like, I'm not sorry. Like,
yeah, he didn't care. But I have to get rid of this idea that I can just drop a bomb. Angus Bradley does it really well. He'll just drop a bomb and fuck off. And Pat Davidson will just drop a bomb.
Pat Davidson told me once, and I was like, this is when when I met him and we were training, and it was such a good experience because I went there and I was like, I want you to show me like how you use this PRI stuff. And he was like, cool, I don't. Let's train. And I was like, sick. Yeah. Thanks so much. Yeah. But he was like, this is how I do. And he's like, this is how I approach Instagram. He's like, I literally just like throw a grenade in there and then I log off and I come back later and I just like see what's going on.
Yeah, I suck at that. But I also just suck at that in terms of just like, just go deep as fuck for a second and don't worry about actually getting the person to the point. And that's why you're like at the start, like, don't worry how technical, just run with it. I'm like, yeah. It's actually a quality that I want because I struggle, and maybe it's not a weakness of mine. Maybe it's a strength that I've wrapped up as a weakness.
There we go. Narratives.
We are back to subjective experience.
Guys, you don't realize that you've actually been listening to a therapy session this entire time, disguised as biomechanics.
That makes so much sense. Maybe I've wrapped that up as a negative, and it's not actually a negative.
No, I don't think so. This is like I'll try and make this practical for anyone listening. The simplest and most useful framework, I think, for social media is 3 points. It is this. It is what, why, how.
I saw your post about this.
What, why, how, all the time. So what are you talking about? Why does it matter?
And then
how do they do it?
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can, at the end, like, write the post and then you come back to it, it's like, cool, is it clear what I'm talking about? Is it clear why it's important? Yeah. And is it clear how somebody can do it or how they can learn more about it? Sweet. That's a green light post.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
makes sense.
It's simple. Like, you can go more than that.
The one thing I've started coming back is what's the value?
Yeah.
Like, don't just make a post if there's no actual value. It's just like, what's the actual, like, if someone was to just observe this one piece of, have they got something from it? Mm-hmm. If it doesn't tick that, there's no point in, like, if that was the only thing they were going to see from you, that's another little framework that I'm trying to get better at.
I think it's important. And I think something, this is Angus Bradley actually, was talking about like being able to speak the platform. So like...
Yeah, the mediums, the message or whatever.
Yeah, like the reason people go on YouTube is not the same as they're on Instagram. Because like you're on YouTube, you're going to search for something, right? You're on Instagram, it's like, whatever the hell pops up. right? So like what value is on Instagram is different to what value is on YouTube.
Yeah.
So value on Instagram like can just be like, this is funny.
Yep.
Like
it's entertainment. Yeah.
like my wife and I, like most of my news is just like parenting memes, and I'm like, this is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like great.
Absolutely.
Like that's valuable to me.
Yeah.
Right. So you can use that to your advantage. And then I think your longer form stuff, it's like, that's where you go in the weeds.
Yeah.
Right. And you're good on YouTube, so.
Yeah, because I like it. And that's another thing that I've thought with content is, and I tell this to all the young coaches and stuff that ask me questions about it. Not to say that I'm any master of content. I honestly think I suck, subjective experience, but just play to your strengths. My strength is not written word. My strength is not actually sitting down and curating an idea. My strength is having a blank-ish slide and letting my brain go and just running through the field wherever I end up. That's why I like podcast. And then if you look at strength culture, but now if you mirror that to what training model on my personal page becomes, it's all visual. It's all video. It's very story based on the stories. There's no real curation of it because all that stuff is not my strength.
No,
because if I sat there and I remember chatting to you about my emails, if I have to sit there and like I formulate the idea, come back in an hour and review it, I'm never gonna do it. I don't do it like that. I'm just gonna like sit down and fucking post the thing. Like
the notes section of my phone is a scary place to look, but I'll just like put ideas and shit, and then I'll block out time and be like, cool. In this time, I'm just gonna go boom, and whatever I get done, I get done. And then the last part is like, cool. I'm gonna like.
Do you do that for posts or just emails?
For posts, like I can usually do it pretty quick now. The posts that do the best are the ones where I'm just like done.
Yeah, off the head, off the
done.
dome, man.
Done. And then like I'm just build up a bank of these. Like I got some great ones. Like
so you get ahead.
Sometimes, like
man.
I'm not someone who's like gonna batch create. Like I'm not
doing
good at
a month ahead. Yeah.
What I will do sometimes is like block out time and go, I'm going to do it for this amount of time. And if I get stuff done, I do.
Whatever.
And if I don't, I don't. Like that works.
If I get one idea, if I get 10 ideas, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I've got ones for like funny. Like I'm like struggling for those ideas. But what am I going to do? Hopefully no one steals this. I won't release it until I post it. But it was going to be something like, people think I lift for my job. My wife thinks I lift to look good for her. And I'm like, but it's actually because like one day my kid's going to be in an argument about whose dad's going to win in a fight. And we're not going to lose that debate. Like something like that. I'm like, that'll be funny. And then like put some video behind it. Yeah. Or the same thing, but like, because one day my daughter's going to bring home a boy for dinner.
You're fine though.
And I'm like,
6'6", mate. 6'6", juggernaut in front.
And I'm like, he's not out benching me. Like something like that, right? Like that kind of shit. And that has nothing to do with my overall messaging. But that's like got a broader appeal.
So I just see that as top funnel. That's the model I use for marketing.
Yeah, it is.
It's connection, it's relatedness, it's all of a sudden all the PTs that have kids and all of that. You just make more sense. It's like, oh, I've got a connection with him, and 100%. Then all like, what is your end game with this page,
mate?
You don't have to speak about anything you want here, but obviously you've pivoted away from your old page, and we had a chat. This was not on air, but I thought maybe when you were talking about publishing, maybe that was part.
I think initially it kind of was, and then I realized like actually that's not.
It's just
thing.
A game of seeing if you can grow this thing.
Yeah, I mean,
do you want a mentor?
Oh yeah, like I enjoy doing that, and I do.
Are you formalizing that process?
I will formalize it. I have a few ideas and a few things in the pipeline that I want to do. One of them I'll mention to you.
Business meeting.
This idea of like fuck the evidence-based conferences. I want to do like CoachCon. Like Coaches Con.
I've got the same idea.
Yeah, it's like that.
I used to do it. Were you around when I did the Strength Culture Congress?
I'm pretty sure we came. Was it the one at the uni?
Yeah, we had 97 tickets. We didn't sell 100.
That'd be pissing me off to this day.
Funny this. We're at 90, and my brain, I was like, I want to get to 100, and I discounted 10 tickets, and Mum calls me, and Mum's like, what the fuck are you doing? My mum behind the scenes is like a business. She's like, what are you doing? 90 people have just paid you a certain fee and you've set a goal to get 100 and just discount it, pull it down, rip it down. What are you talking about? She's like, you're just spitting in all that fat. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even think about this. I wanted to get to 100 so bad. We got to like 97. I was like, oh fuck. But that's what that goal was. And then COVID killed it. Yeah. We had the second one to come. Bryce Krawcheck was involved from Canada.
Oh yeah, nice.
and Luke Tulloch was going to get involved in the second one, and then it had to turn into an online thing. We sold like 50 tickets. It was an online Zoom thing, and I was like, and then COVID came.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it.
I want Coach Con.
I want 2 days.
Yeah, 100%.
Tactical day, like not tactical, but a day that is like skill set, whatever, and then there's a secondary option that's like behind the scenes.
Let's go.
The business, the fucking attitude, the mindset of that's my idea.
And like
you either come to the tactical one or you buy the double thing and you come to the
100%.
I've thought about it.
Yeah,
It's in my head.
Seriously,
Maybe we can collab on that.
Yeah, I want to do it. So that's part of it. And then the other one, yeah, like mentoring. I want to do I've call it like the cohort. Just because everyone calls it a mentorship.
You got to call it something.
I'll call it cohort.
Yeah. I call it the wormhole.
Which I'll be honest, I'm still flat that it's not called the glory hole.
The glory hole. That was my favorite one, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
That's fair. You got to do what sells.
Experience wins again.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, all of that will be in the pipeline.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
like I enjoy that shit.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
You got to have fun, don't you?
Mad. What are we gonna call that 2-day event?
Well, I wanted to call it Coach Con, like Comic Con, but for coaches.
Yeah.
I'm not actually that stuck on the name. But the idea would be pretty similar to what you said. It's like you get not a whole bunch, like we'll vet the people.
10 to 15 people.
100%.
Across some rehab guys, some coaches, some business owners, some whatever. Give them this is my idea, not the...
Yeah, go.
I've had this same idea though. You give them an open book within reason of whatever topic you want. Mm-hmm. One thing I haven't worked out is how do we get the high quality people I'm already in this together with you.
Let's go.
How do we get the high quality people without having to be like, yeah, we'll pay you $5,000, like whatever. Like, do we just profit share? I've thought about this a lot.
That's the hard part, like, because you want to bring like a big name.
So like, I always think Angus Bradley. I could call Angus Bradley and just be like, man, can you come and do this thing? He'll drop a flight. He'll fucking come. Whatever. I'd buy him a steak dinner and he'd do whatever he wants. But I'm like, I can call that favor for him and maybe like a Will Crozier. I couldn't really call it for anyone else. Like, how do I get XYZ? I won't say the people that I'm thinking about, but the XYZ of somebody to.
That's the hard part, and like the problem, like, and this is maybe it's a false belief as well. But yeah, we can call in favors from people that we know that have a high profile, which is great. But then, if you then go and put all your financial resources into bringing somebody else in, well, that's a pretty shitty way to treat your friends, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like they're doing it as a solid, and then they find out this guy's getting...
The only thing I've thought is a profit share.
Yeah, that could work.
And you just upfront say, this is the venue, this is what it's going to cost. Anything past this point, we split.
I think that works. The other thing would be like, maybe the first one, like...
But then also that profit thing becomes flying people in, accommodate, and then all of a sudden it turns into somebody. So much. But then this is the problem, why I think these things don't work long term. Let's just say we went for an Israel. Israel does not need this thing, does not want this thing, does not want to fly over here, and ultimately he could just use his platform and destroy whatever we are trying to create. And then, like, do you aim for lower? Like,
yes.
Like, just not
I think you go, like...
Just local talent.
Yeah, because I was talking to Andrew Coates, if you know who he is.
The name rings a bell.
He's got his podcast is big, but he's in Canada, and he runs, like, I think it's called Evolve Conference or whatever. Yeah. And he gets a whole bunch of people there. And he posts about putting it together, which is where we started chatting about. The process. Yeah, the process. And he's like... One of his things was, like... He's the world's nicest guy, and he was semi-salty. He's like, coaches are messaging me being like, oh, I'd love to be a part of your conference. He's like, I need you to understand how this works. Like, every single one of these guests, it's like, I need to bring people in that are going to sell tickets.
They have to bring 30, 40 tickets in or whatever.
Yeah. And he's like, this is just how this works. And, like, he's got big names and stuff there. But, like, there's a big, big outlay for him. But he's got, like... he had like Jonathan Goodman and like Christian.
Jonathan Goodman's a fucking machine, man.
Thibodeau or whatever his last name is.
Christian Thibodeau, yeah.
Yeah, or like all those guys. Like, so yeah, like they're not going to do it for peanuts, are they?
Yeah. Local talent.
And I think that way, like, hopefully, like
strengthen the community here.
And then whatever profits you make from the first one, you invest in the second one.
Absolutely.
Bring a guest in.
Yeah.
That's probably the smarter way to do it. Because otherwise it's like...
The other thing I'd like to know your thoughts on this is obviously online... I hate online education, but it just ticks the box in so many ways. that you get the conversation about like, oh, can I just buy the fucking pass online or whatever? Like,
Nah, fuck 'em.
online, yeah, in person only.
Yeah, in person only, or like, yeah, sure, there's an online one, but it's not going to be like drastically cheaper.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, it's not. Like, why should, like, here's my thing.
True.
Why should it be? Like,
The product's the same.
yeah. And then just make
The
it.
experience is actually worse online. Come to the fucking in person. Make the online one more expensive.
I make it like less, because this is how I like approach like offer creation as well. Whatever you want someone to do, make that the most attractive option. You don't just have to have one thing.
Yeah, so I tried this with my gate webinar. I had 155 people, and I in my head I was like, I just know no one's coming to this live thing. And I was like, I'm just going to package some fucking thing about like, oh, there's an exclusive offer to get to this thing, come in live. And I still only had like, I think we peaked at like 44 people, like a third, which is still not bad. Like when you think about like it's a free thing. I told people there was a 48-hour period you could watch it and whatever. Like I still got close to a third of people. But I sat in there at the end and I was like, oh, I just sometimes hate online shit. Like I love it because it's freely accessible and
That's
all of
the
that
benefit.
sort of stuff. But yeah.
I would like, yeah, I think you go, cool, you can sell some online tickets for it, sure. Don't discount them as much as, you know, you feel like you should. And then just make it that like anybody that comes in person gets access to all the online stuff indefinitely anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, cool, you buy an in-person ticket, you're going to get all the videos anyway.
Yeah. 100%.
And like, yeah, maybe it's like...
There's no need to discount it because the product is actually the same. It's
the same
actually
thing.
shitter. So you should come to the in-person.
Yeah.
I'm keen for this fucking thing that we're about to create.
Yeah. I mean, who knows?
I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it.
I don't know either. But you heard it here first. It's every capital city in the country. Pretty much like a rock tour.
No.
But for fitness.
I reckon just... Because you dilute it.
Yeah, I think you make it exclusive.
2 a year.
I'd even go like 1 a year.
1 a year? One a
Yeah.
year. Bam.
One a year.
And then we just rotate the cities. Bam, bam. 5-year plan. Melbourne, Sydney,
Yeah.
Queensland,
And we
Perth,
get the
Adelaide.
cities to bid for it. No.
Yeah.
It's like the Olympics.
Yeah.
What are you going to bring to us?
You pay us.
Why should we come to Brisbane?
Yeah. We end up in Bunbury or something.
Yeah, because you go like, you know, obviously, like we'll probably do the first one in Melbourne. Let's be real. Do you know why? Because we're planning it and we have kids and it's a pain in the ass to travel.
I'm keen to do it. I've been thinking about this. I can tell you the names that I've thought, but some of them I don't think are the right fit.
All right, hit me.
No, it's not online. No,
Okay.
This will get back to me. No.
All right, cool. Well, we'll leave it there.
I think we're done. Yeah, that
we'll
was
leave it.
mad. Honestly, if you made it to 142, send me a DM. I'd love to
100%.
I'd just love to chat. I'd love to just know what you're about, who you are, and let's see what's going on.
100%.
Thanks for checking in.
That's a gold star if you made it to this point.
Yeah. I will find something to give you a discount, just something. Come down to the gym. We'll do a pet. Just if you've made it here, I like you. I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Done.
Use the code word glory hole
Glory
to
hole.
know that we made it to this point.
Yeah. Glory hole. Done. Ciao. Thank you for having me, man. And also, I appreciate what you're doing. You're inspiring.
Likewise, my friend. Likewise.